It is a massive week for sports in the Valley. Tonight marks the first time March Madness basketball is being played here, with a pair of Sweet 16 games being played at T-Mobile Arena tonight and an Elite 8 game slated for Saturday. But that's not the only thing bringing scores of people to town. Tomorrow and Saturday, singer Taylor Swift will play a pair of sold-out shows at Allegiant Stadium. Fox 5's Kim Passoff is there now with the impact on all this on Las Vegas. Kim?
Yeah, so tens of thousands of fans are here for Taylor Swift. March Madness has long been a draw for the city of Las Vegas. Gamblers coming here to put down their bets on the tournament. But until now, it has been impossible to watch a game except on TV. Well, that has all changed as of tonight.
I think it's a great city for it. Perfect.
Traveled thousands of miles to come here.
Being in Vegas for a Sweet 16 and hopefully an Elite 8 is really special.
March Madness taking over T-Mobile, helping solidify Vegas's title as a sports capital.
But hosting the NCAA men's tournament is really, a jewel in our crown.
UNLV professor Amanda Bellarmino says Vegas is taking its place as a sports city with events like the NFL Draft, the Pro Bowl, even the Super Bowl next year. Now coming to town after years of being shunned.
There's just been a greater social acceptance and understanding of betting. I think fantasy football actually had a lot to do with that. But I think probably one of the most important things was when we had the Supreme Court ruling that allowed sports betting to be legal anywhere in the United States that wished to have it legal.
That has opened the doors, and sports have continued to come. From the Golden Knights to the Raiders to the Aces and F1 later this year. Now, as college athletes are in town, Bellarmino says Vegas is seeing a new, younger demographic of visitor.
So it's really a great way of helping to diversify our tourism economy. As we continue to see signs of economic turndown, it allows us to not be relying so heavily on leisure travel.
And because large venues like Allegiant and T-Mobile were built for sports, it also helps bring in big entertainers like Taylor Swift. Swifties now swarming the Strip.
It's Taylor Swift.
I'd do anything for her.
I didn't think I was doing totes or the tapestry, but Dad had to get them for the kids.
For a long time, we weren't necessarily a spot when people were doing their tours. And so now we are seeing that. And it really does show us being regarded as a major city in the United States and not simply a tourist place.
And the NCAA had a policy which prevented towns that had sports betting from hosting championships, college championship games, but that was overturned in 2019. And in 2028, the Final Four will be right here in Las Vegas. Reporting live tonight, Kim Passoff, Fox 5 News, local, Las Vegas.